Anthony Fauci bids us all farewell. He gives us a final lecture before he leaves the podium, hopefully for the very last time ever. And it was a very weird ordeal. The media had some actually hard questions for him, but Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, would not let him answer them. Actually, she sort of jumped in front of the questions like a bodyguard protecting the doctor. And it started, interestingly, with cupcakes. This was Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, announcing the final press briefing of Dr. Fauci with cupcakes.
Hi. I know, I bring bearing gifts. I have some Thanksgiving cookies for all of you.
Oh, perfect. Oh, perfect. Why don't we just hand a bunch of food with our bare hands and pass around this box of consumables from person to person without our masks on, you know, at a COVID briefing. Can you believe this? Look how dangerous and reckless these people are being. Look at this. Watch them pass this thing around.
You guys have to pass this around.
Just passing it around, one person to the next. Did you bake these,
it would
Karine?
be quite impressive, wouldn't it be? I know. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm joined by White House COVID Coordinator Dr. Ashish Jha and Chief Medical Advisor to the President and NIAID Director Dr. Fauci. As you all know, Dr. Fauci is retiring next month, and I'm honored, so honored, to have him join me today. One more time at the podium, and he's going to discuss the importance of getting your updated COVID vaccine shot ahead of the holiday.
That's it? That's his final message? A big COVID lecture? We've gotten enough of those all over the place. And so, all right, so they're going to lecture us about COVID while they're passing around COVID cupcakes, just one after the other. Hey, did Ducey take one? Yeah, let's see if Ducey took one. Ducey's right here. Did he get a cupcake today? Ducey? Yeah, he got a cupcake, didn't he? That's him right there. Oh, yeah. All right, so then he passed it down, cupcake, spreading COVID all over the place. Then they come back around the second row, COVID cupcakes all over the place. Just typical. All right. So Ducey got a cupcake. The rest of them got cupcakes. And they're going to give us a giant lecture about getting the updated jabs, because that's what they do, right? Every single time that they're out there, got to lecture us about all of this. So Karine comes out, gives the big introduction, passes out the COVID cupcakes, and finishes up her introduction with this glowing hagiography of Dr. Fauci.
Dr. Fauci has always led with the science, and our country is stronger and healthier because of his leadership. Today, he's returned again to tell you a bit more about the science related to this updated COVID shots that you've heard us all talk about, and an important, clear message you've heard from him before, which is, please get vaccinated.
Get
your vaccine.
Just do it,
So
man.
without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Dr. Fauci for his last run.
His last one.
It's all yours, Dr. Fauci.
Why is the press not
Thank
clapping?
you very much, Karine, for that really
Show
very
some
kind
respect. It's his
introduction.
last
It's really
one.
a great pleasure to be back here with you again, albeit, I believe, for the last time. But
Yes.
as Karine said, I'm going to spend the next just couple of minutes talking to you about the importance of getting an updated booster vaccine as we enter into the holiday season and the colder
It's going to be cold.
weeks and months.
Yeah, it's going to be
of the
winter.
late fall
Yeah, it's
and
going to be winter
early
again.
Winter. So let's just talk very briefly about what we know about.
Do you hear that person coughing? They're coughing all over the place there, spreading around cupcakes. Okay, so we're not going to listen to this, right? He goes on for the next 2 minutes. Here, let's just listen.
Hundreds of millions in the United States, and there's robust safety monitoring systems that are in place, and clearly an extensive body of information.
Yes, we know. Yes, we know. Okay, so the lecture goes on. Let's fast forward another minute. See if is he still droning on here.
Data. Why do you tell us that we should be, for our own safety and that of our families and the community, get a booster shot. There are two issues that in some respects are unprecedented when it comes to infectious diseases.
All right, we heard the litany, okay? Follow the CDC guidelines. Don't question the science. Do whatever Dr. Fauci says. We're complying with all the YouTube mandates here. But of course, he goes on for about 17 minutes and just lectures us because that's what he does. Now, we've got some interesting clips from him because Fauci gets asked a question, right? He goes on, lecture you do this or you're a bad person and you're killing grandma unless you do exactly what I say. He finishes that lecture before the media starts to chime in. They say, hey, we've got some questions for you, Dr. Fauci. This is the last time that you're going to be at the press briefing room. And we really have to know answers to these questions, in particular, sort of where did COVID come from? Karine Jean-Pierre jumps in front of him like a bodyguard to accept the media bullets. And we're going to get there in one quick second. After we talk about how important gold is, my friends. If you have an IRA, a 401k or a savings account, you know that things are scary out there. The Biden administration has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 combined. National debt hit a record $30 trillion. Inflation's the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time before the house of cards comes crashing down. If you've got retirement savings, your money could be at serious risk. Talk to my friends over at Goldco. See how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. That's robertlikesgold.com. It's an A+ rated Better Business Bureau business at robertlikesgold.com. And we all like gold, so go check that out. All right, and so we've got Fauci now, of course, who is finishing up. He's done. He's been lecturing America for 2 years now. We're all sick and tired of him. And he gets one final question at the podium. Doctor, since this is your last day here, might you opine about the origin of COVID? Can you tell us where this whole thing came from? Because we've been dealing with it for a long time. Karine Jean-Pierre comes crashing in there to protect him.
When I see people in this country, because of the divisiveness in our country, of not getting vaccinated for reasons that have nothing to do with public health.
Nobody trusts you.
That have to do because of divisiveness and ideological differences.
Censorship.
As a physician, it pains me because I don't want to see anybody get infected. I don't want to see anybody hospitalized. And I don't want to see anybody die from COVID.
Should have been a better leader.
Whether you're a far-right Republican or a far-left Democrat, it doesn't make any difference to me. I look upon it the same way as I did in the emergency room in the middle of New York City when I was taking care of everybody that was coming in off the street. So that's the thing that troubles me most.
Okay, here comes the question.
Dr. Fauci, only 13% of...
Hold on one second. We have a process here.
Whoa.
I'm not calling out on people who yell.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
And you're being disrespectful to your colleagues, and you're being disrespectful to our guests.
Karine.
I will not call on you if you yell. And also, you're taking time off the clock because Dr. Fauci has to leave in a couple of minutes. I'm done. I'm not getting into a back and forth with you. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Dr. Fauci,
But she's
only
asking
only
a great question.
Stop being mean. Go ahead,
She's
Jeremy.
asking a valid question. You ask your question, you should allow her to answer the question.
Jeremy.
She's
Jeremy,
asking a valid
it's Jeremy.
question, Dr. Fauci,
It's
on
Jer-
the origin of COVID-19.
It is not your turn. It is not your turn.
You can't on the same people. That's the thing. You can't read a press briefing. You need to call from people across the room. She has a valid question. She's asking about the origin of COVID-19.
I hear the question.
If you can't hear the guy in the background, he's saying, she had a valid question. You have to take questions from people across the room, Karine. You can't just pick the obvious questions from people that you love. She has a valid question. It's his last day here. She wants to know about the origin of COVID, and so I'm just picking up for her. Can you just help us out?
Dr. Fauci is the best person to answer
I
that
hear
question.
your question, but we're not doing this the way you want it. This is the disrespectful. It is. I'm done. Simon, I'm done. Simon, I'm done. I'm done with you right now.
Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
so
Go ahead.
only-
You're taking time
only-
away from your colleagues. Go ahead.
Only 13% of adults have gotten this updated bivalent booster. 78% of adults have completed their primary series. Which of those numbers is more important in your mind in terms of anticipating how bad
Skids
this
right over
winter
it.
surge could be if there is one, and the number of hospitalizations and deaths. And then a second question for you as well.
Yeah, Jeremy, they're both important. So I
Took
don't
the
wanna
question
say one is
away.
more
Took
and
the
then
question
diminish
right
the
away
other.
from him. Goes right back to the jab. Everybody get jabs no matter what. Jab, 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 jab it up everywhere you want. So you heard that question. Let's listen to that one more time. You can hear his question in the background.
It is not your turn.
You can't on the same people. That's the thing. You can't really get press briefing. You need to call from people across the room. She has a valid question. She's asking about the origin of COVID-19.
I hear the question.
And Dr. Fauci is the best person to answer
I
that
hear
question.
your question, but we're not doing this the
Didn't even let him answer. Now, pay attention to Fauci, right? He didn't jump in on that one. He wasn't standing there saying, "I'll answer that. Sure, I'm happy to answer that." You know, obviously we did our analysis. We went through a number of different reports. We analyzed this, and this is our conclusion, and blah blah blah. But he didn't. He just kind of stood there and let Karine jump in and protect him. But that's not what he did in another situation. Very interestingly, when Fauci was about to be escorted out, or when he was wrapping up his questions, he got a question from the media about the Republicans. Mr. Fauci, you know the Republicans are going to be in charge of the House of Representatives pretty soon. Are you concerned about that? Because we know you're like leaving office because you kind of don't want to be under the microscope, but you're gonna. How do you feel?
More, because the other side that just keeps putting out misinformation and disinformation seems to be tireless in that effort, and it's going to be very difficult.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not tired. I'm not tired. No.
Thank you.
Aggressive oversight from House Republicans, a new majority next year that they've been promising on some
Hold
of
on
these
one
very
second.
Watch this. Okay, so I'm going to take myself out of this. Here comes Karine. Watch the panic in her face. Okay, so you're going to hear the media say, "Hey, Republicans are going to take over. You're coming up hot for this." Watch her face right here. She gets a little bit nervous and she just jumps in again. Watch.
Republicans, a new majority next year that they've been promising on some
Hold
of
on
these
one
very
second. Dr. Jha is going to stay to take a couple more questions, but Dr. Fauci actually has to go. So thank you so much, Dr. Fauci. Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer this question.
I can answer.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can answer it.
Answer it. Okay,
I'm a good
go ahead. I'm just trying to keep him
all
on
right.
time.
All right. And did you see the little weird little like handoff? Like, are you okay, Mr. Fauci? Can you handle this? Watch this.
Stay to take a couple more questions, but Dr. Fauci actually has to go.
Watch a little
Thank
pat
you
on the
so much,
shoulder, a
Dr.
little
Fauci.
touch, touch.
I can answer this
You want
question.
to answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's
I'll answer it. Okay,
I'm a
go
good
ahead.
She was physically showing him the door, right? Like she was, look at this hand right here. See that hand? She's like, "Get out of here." Nope, don't answer that question. You're done.
You want to answer it?
Yeah.
Okay, he says I'll answer it. Okay,
I'm a good-
go ahead. Go ahead. I'm just trying to keep him
all
on
right.
time.
Try and
The
keep him on
answer
time.
is, if there are oversight hearings, I absolutely will cooperate fully and testify before the Congress
Great.
if asked. You may not know, but I've testified before the Congress a few hundred times, okay?
Great,
Over the
great.
last 40 years or so. So I have no trouble testifying. We can defend and explain and stand by everything that we've said. So I have nothing to hide.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Dr. Fauci. How
Now, Ducey, you see Ducey there. I don't know what happened to his cupcake, but he is now trying to get a follow-up question in. Karine is giving him the side eye. She's like, "All right, you're done now. Get the heck out of here." And they now escort him out.
much do you think, Dr. Fauci, how much do you think, just a follow-up on the oversight, Dr. Fauci?
No follow-up.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci.
Time for a couple
Ducey is
questions.
disappointed, man.
Dr. Jha.
Do you see his
More.
face? Poor Ducey. Absolute, oh, you see him go. Question, I think I'm going to get it. Oh, man, disappointment. And I love Ducey. He's great. So, it's I empathize with him, man. I'd love to have that question answered. Sheesh. But a strange ordeal there in the Congress. At the press briefing room. Now, this question came up. Anthony Fauci is currently under order to appear for a deposition. Eric Schmidt posted this. He's literally being deposed today. Dr. Fauci is being asked a bunch of questions about colluding with big tech. Eric Schmidt and others are leading the deposition. And so you see he posted this on Twitter. "Tomorrow we take the deposition of Dr. Fauci. Dun, dun, dun. What would you ask him under oath?" Ooh, can you imagine? I'd love to crowdsource a list of questions for him and have him sit down. "Hey, YouTube, what should we ask? Hey, locals. Hey, Rumble. Hey, Facebook. What do you think we should ask them?" Oh, my gosh. We're going to talk about it later on our after party on locals. But That's what is going on with Dr. Fauci. He is scheduled for a deposition, but other people who are part of that same lawsuit are trying their very best to not be deposed. Previously this week, we talked about Jen Psaki. She is also scheduled for a deposition alongside Dr. Fauci and others, and she really does not want to be deposed. Jen Psaki was the former press secretary for the Biden administration. She was succeeded by Karine Jean-Pierre, who then is now in charge. We just heard from her. But Psaki does not want to be deposed. Fauci is being deposed. Psaki really wants to avoid it if she can. But previously, we had talked about this. Psaki filed a motion to quash the subpoena, right? This is the state of Missouri versus Joe Biden. This order came out a few days ago, right? 11/21. And we read through this and I explained how angry this judge was at Jen Psaki. But I wanted to revisit this before we look into this new memo. We've got three things to take a look at here in this little segment. We've got the original order that came from Jen Psaki. Okay, this first thing we're going to look at came from Psaki and her lawyers. The next document came from the federal government. So Psaki and her lawyers privately want to have her not be deposed. The government now, through the DOJ, Jen Psaki's not in the government anymore. They also are now stepping in as the government saying, please don't depose Psaki. Okay, so let's take a look at both of those before we review the final scheduling order that came out from the judge. So the original order, the judge told Psaki, you are being deposed, okay? Your request to quash the subpoena is denied. Your request to postpone the deposition is denied. And this judge was very angry at her and really her defense lawyers. And we talked about this before. They said that they were trying to do an end run around the court, right? There was a prior ruling from this court that said that Jen Psaki has to sit for a deposition. But her lawyers, they tried to make an end run around this court's prior ruling by filing a challenge in a separate court. The judge did the analysis and said, look, I've already ruled on this a couple times, okay? There are no exceptional circumstances, despite Psaki and federal defendants saying she's a formal press secretary and she's not in this anymore. She is still ordered to show up for the depo. The motion to quash is denied, right? That all took place on November 21st. This was after Psaki's lawyers filed a big motion explaining why she's a mother and why she's got a new job and why this would be very burdensome for her. But this is the final say from the judge. Now, we set that aside. Okay, that came out just a few days ago. The U.S. government, the federal government now, submitted a second request, or basically an additional request. You see, this came out on 11/22. This is being filed by the United States government from the Civil Division. Submitted from the U.S. Department of Justice, the Civil Division. Okay, this is not Psaki's lawyers. Psaki's not even in the government anymore. So the DOJ counsel named Idradeen Sur filed this on behalf of the United States, dated November 22nd, 2022. So the judge, look, Judge said, you're ordered to be deposed. Psaki tried to do an end run around it. Judge said a second time, you're being deposed. Now the federal government is stepping in a third time trying to get Psaki to not be deposed. Here's what the request is. The government asks the court to adjourn the deposition of Jennifer Psaki, saying Psaki is not required or should not be required to sit down and answer your questions. The government respectfully moves this court for an order adjourning the deposition of Jennifer Psaki on the grounds that the Fifth Circuit order is being addressed. We request this adjournment by November 29th, and if they don't grant the adjournment, they want additional time, right? Here's what they say. On October 21st, in the depositions order, the states got permission to take depositions of high-ranking officials. We've covered all of that. They served Psaki with a subpoena on November 1st. They ordered her to appear on December 8th. So put that in your calendar. Psaki's coming back December 8th unless this is successful. Psaki, through private counsel and the government, moved on November 3rd in the United States to quash the subpoena. And we read that yesterday or earlier this week. Following the motions being transferred to this court and the judge being pissed about this, saying you did an end run around us, this court issued an expedited decision denying those motions, the one we just read. Also denied a stay of the deposition. Now, separately, right, in a parallel case, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit issued another order in a different case called In Re Murthy. Murthy is Vivek Murthy, who's also in the Biden administration, who's also subject to deposition. So therefore, after there's a separate thing going on in the Fifth Circuit, they're saying the defendants now sought a writ in mandamus to vacate this court's order authorizing depositions of Murthy, Easterly, Flaherty, and others. Now, at the outset, the order concluded that those 3 current federal officials are categorized as high-ranking officials, and that, if they're in that category, it implicates other standards. The court's prior conclusion here that the proposed deponents, the people who were set to be deposed, that they had personal knowledge was not sufficient, the Court of Appeals said, because that knowledge may be shared widely and extensively. So basically what they're saying is a different higher level court has a different interpretation of high-ranking officials and the standards that should be met in order to make those high-ranking officials eligible for a deposition. So they continue. They say, all right, that order on that basis directed this court to enter an order to address the issues of the availability of suitable alternative sources for the evidence sought by the proposed depositions. The Fifth Circuit ordered a stay of those depositions, and in the depositions order and in its subsequent order, this court's rationale tracked its rationale for authorizing other depositions. Okay, so in other words, there's a separate proceeding taking place. Vivek Murthy also doesn't want to be deposed. And so in a separate matter, they're doing sort of a parallel analysis, and they're saying they are very similar. And so if we take a look at how they're doing it here, we should apply this to how they're doing it here, and you should come to a different conclusion. That's why they're urging the transfers of motions. They're filing things in different places. Therefore, they write, accordingly, the court should adjourn Ms. Psaki's deposition until, in light of In Re Murthy, this court has entered a new order that goes and tries to identify alternative sources and see if they can get that information elsewhere. They say that in assessing the personal knowledge requirement, it's unlikely that Psaki's knowledge is going to be useful. Accordingly, until this court enters an order and written findings of Psaki, and the kind that the Fifth Circuit has directed this court to enter, they're asking for a stay of the deposition pending the outcome. Submitted by Brian Boynton, James Gilligan, Idrin Sur, attorneys for the defendants. Okay, so this is the defendants, meaning the United States government, submitting this on behalf of Psaki. So the judge then finally came out, and this happened today. He wants briefs on this. So again, we'll see what he says. He says, on November 22nd, the defendants filed a motion to adjourn. The states may file a response on or by November 25th, and then the defendants may file a reply by November 28th. So all of this is taking place very, very quickly. And Psaki is scheduled for the deposition in December. So the judge is scheduling these dates prior to the deposition, and the judge is going to ultimately issue a ruling on this. But the point of sharing this with you, until we get that ruling, we don't know if Jen Psaki is going to still have to sit for the deposition, but they are trying everything to prevent her from having to do that, right? This is now Psaki. So the original request was submitted by the states, granted. Request to quash, denied. Now we have a second request to adjourn. We'll see what the judge says. But of course, we'll continue to follow that. Thank you for subscribing and following along wherever it is you are watching this. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.